Going into the final day of the World Rapid Play Championship, Magnus Carlsen led the field by half a point. He faced Vincent Keymer in the first game of the day, and Carlsen played an absolutely sublime positional game, squeezing Keymer. You can see that Carlsen here with white has beautiful pawn on a6. He's got a nice space advantage, nice regular pawn chain. And here he broke in with the knight. This pawn is attacked. The king is ready to advance and capture this one. White dominates the c-file. It's a horrible position for black. Keymer went for activity, giving up the e-pawn. He's hoping to get in rook c2 check, but rook d6 well calculated by Carlsen. After the exchange, and then rook f5, great move. Threatening to come in here if this pawn is taken. Looking at a7 and g7, you can see that pawn on a6 has such potency. It's just hanging over black's head here. Keymer did his best to fight back. d7, excellent move. So if king takes, then once again the rook reaches the 7th rank. And now, good calculation. That's the secret of good technique, good calculation. If king takes pawn, then rook check. You exchange rooks and you win the king and pawn endgame very easily. And again, good calculation, same thing. White wants to go into the king and pawn endgame. Keymer instead goes for the a-pawn, but it's all in vain. The king advances. Here Keymer resigned. Well, the king advances to support the pawn, and that is game over. Superb performance from Carlsen. So things looking good. 3 games to go. This is what happened in the next round. Vladislav Artemiev against Carlsen. Well, Carlsen with black equalised very easily. Symmetrical pawn structure. Carlsen starting to think, well, maybe I can be better with black here. He played knight e4. He's hoping that after the exchange, then perhaps black can use the open c-file. But knight e4 was a terrible blunder. f4 hits the queen, and the queen is going to have to let go of the knight. This is what happened. Queen f5, g4. It's got to step away. Then white is just a piece up for nothing. Carlsen played rook takes, but this just leads to a lost endgame after rook d7. Well, it's clear that white is winning very easily. There followed a draw against Caruana in the next round, and then a matchup in the final round against Parham Maghsoodloo, former world junior champion from Iran. I mean, a strong player and pretty good at rapid play. But going to that final round, you know, after just taking a half point from the last 2 games, there were 3 players in the lead. Carlsen on 9, Vincent Keymer on 9, he'd bounced back, and Artemiev on 9 points. So 3 players sharing the lead. So Carlsen knew that a draw, well, it might not be good enough to win. He really had to go for the win in this final game. Well, he always does anyway. Let's see what happens. So Carlsen with white played e4. Well, he switches around a lot, but I wonder, well, who knows what made him choose e4. You know, he's going for a win anyway in this final game. Knight f3, I'm sure he was glad to see a Sicilian on the board. You know, he doesn't have to fight for an interesting position, a position that, you know, just naturally gives interesting chances for both sides. Maghsoodloo plays the classical. Again, I think Carlsen would probably have been quite pleased to see this on the board. The classical with bishop g5, always felt that white is very comfortable in these kind of positions, can play solidly and play quite positionally actually, but also you know, you always have the chance to play for an attack as well. So Maghsoodloo goes for one of the main lines with a6 and bishop d7. And here the old way is just to play f4. But Carlsen goes for f3. So what he's doing now is playing a kind of English attack where white is going to play g4, g4 and h4 and storm these pawns down the board. And the f3 pawn supports e4 as well, so very solid. Knight takes, queen takes, bishop e7, castle, and b5. So Maghsoodloo trying to get his queenside counterplay in motion, but you know, white is well set up here. The king is actually pretty safe on b1, tucked away. Very often when you advance the b pawn in these Sicilian positions, it's to undermine the support for the pawn on e4, but that pawn is very well protected in this case. So that's not an issue for white. So Carlsen just continues with h4, supporting the bishop, but getting ready for the kingside avalanche. Rook b8. Yeah, wants to perhaps support the b pawn and, who knows, maybe play queen b6 at some point. g4, there we go. So white is looking to usually just bring the bishop back and advance the pawns. b4, pushing the knight out of the way. And here black has quite a big choice. So h5 is interesting to try and, you know, block kingside pawns. Queen a5 also played. One could consider just castling here as well. But a5 from Maghsoodloo. Knight g3, so that knight swinging over to the king side. Now, sometimes, you know, you see the knight defending here on the queen side. Looks very solid, but Carlsen playing really aggressively, bringing that knight into the attack. Queen c7. So the bishop comes back. I mean, this is like clockwork. Very simple strategy. And the advantage of playing the knight to g3 is that white is going to push and the knight cannot reach h5, of course. The knight on g3 can take it. So things are looking pretty nice for white at this point. Rook c8. Attack c2. No drama. Rook h2. Just defending along the second rank. And white is ready to push the pawn, and that's going to be rather uncomfortable for that knight. It's going to have to retreat. Once black starts retreating, that's not very comfortable. I mean, very often in these kind of situations, you want to play e5 and put the bishop on e6 just to gain a bit of space in the territory. It's gain a bit of space in the middle of the board, in the centre. But here, well, it's just not going to be possible when, you know, there's potentially a bishop check on b5. You know, black's king isn't that secure in the middle of the board. And castles can be met by g5. The knight would have to go back here. It doesn't look nice at all, blocking the rooks. Maghsoodloo tried d5. Now you can see that opens up this diagonal. Okay, got to be a little bit careful with white here. But e5, that's the natural response. So now we've got this kind of French pawn structure. This knight is still problematic for black. Maghsoodloo decides to castle. Now here's an interesting moment. Perhaps you'd like to have a think. How would you play with white in this position? I should say there's more than one good move here. But okay, let me have a quick drink of my tea. Cheers. You have a little think. What would you do? What do you think Carlsen played in this position? Well, he didn't take on f6. This is possible. Now the queen is attacked, the knight is attacked, But actually white can crawl out of this. I suspect this involved too much calculation, because actually white can get away with bishop f4. So if the queen moves, then white is just going to be a piece up. And if e5, then that's a strong move. And an endgame is reached. And white must be better there. White has the healthier pawn structure. But instead, in rapid play, there's a lot to calculate there. You don't know, you might have missed something. Carlsen found a simpler solution. Bishop a6. This nudges the rook away from the open file. Very sensible. So the rook moves away, attacking the bishop. The bishop just dropped back to d3. That's where the bishop wants to go anyway, looking down towards the king side. But it's just nudged the rook off the open file. So that's a crafty little move from Carlsen. Rook c8. So this is still something of an issue. Pawn takes knight, bishop takes. So queen f4. It's possible to play g5 there actually. So now this diagonal is blocked. Now this really is a threat. So the knight dropped back to e8. Not a very pretty square for the knight. You can see it actually at the moment has no place to go to. g5. So, I mean, there are lots of ideas associated with this move g5. It could be that white simply wants to keep going with the pawn storm, but also bear in mind knight h5 to f6, which looks pretty deadly. Lots of ideas. Maghsoodloo decided, right, I need to exchange pieces. Not that white needs to oblige. I mean, one could actually just drop the bishop back, but, well, there's no point in hanging around. Just exchanging, I mean, from a positional point of view, that's quite nice, but of course white is playing for checkmate, forget the positional stuff. That just an exchange gains time. And white is getting very close to a touchdown here with these pawns. One more move and we're in with g6. So that's not the only thing that's possible. After bishop b5, well, black is getting closer to a bit of counterplay after this exchange. Got to watch out for the back rank sometimes. But after bishop b5, white has a very powerful move. Bishop takes pawn check is absolutely crushing. King takes. Now queen f7 is good. g6 is even better. Which this is just going to open up the h file. Pawn takes. And now here's the killer move. Queen f7. Just making sure that the king is trapped on the rook's file. It's a very simple mechanism and there is absolutely no defense. So the threat is to take here and that's checkmate. Maghsoodloo tries to close, but then h6. And that really is game over. No decent defense to pawn takes pawn and checkmate. Absolutely crushing victory from Carlsen in that final game. And, well, in the other two games, let me just get to the final results. Artemiev lost to Caruana, and Vincent Keymer came very close to defeating Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, but he could only draw in the end. So that meant that Carlsen sneaked through and he won the tournament with 10 points out of 13. Keymer and Caruana in joint second, third position with 9.5. Keymer, I think, took the silver, Caruana the bronze. So Carlsen wins the World Rapid Play Championship with 10 out of 13. I think what we saw in that final day was that Carlsen is such a sort of multifaceted player against Keymer. Just sublime positional performance, a classic Carlsen squeeze. And in that final game against Maghsoodloo, well, I think a very controlled and in the end crushing attack. Looks like Carlsen could do it all, and even blundering a piece along the way, but he got away with it. There you go. Next up, of course, is the World Blitz Championship. That one's a little bit more random than the rapid play, but let's see what happens there. There could be quite a few contenders. Nakamura didn't figure in the rapid play at all. He, afraid, just bombed out completely. But I suspect he might be reserving his energy for the blitz. Let's see. I wonder if we'll again see a Carlsen-Nakamura finale in the Blitz Championship. Thanks for watching.